The screams were the first thing that broke through the music. Amidst the chaos of scattered champagne flutes and overturned chairs, I remained perfectly still. My sister, Chloe, the family's radiant golden child, was on her knees. Her designer wedding gown, a cloud of white silk that had cost more than my car, was now just a puddle on the floor as she shrieked my name with a raw, animalistic rage. Black-clad Interpol agents moved with a chilling efficiency, securing her new husband and his entire entourage. One of them, the team lead, approached me, his eyes bypassing the screaming bride and the cuffed oligarchs. He gave a short, respectful nod. "Analyst, the package is secure," he said, his voice a low hum in my ear. "The asset forfeiture directive is active." I gave him a single, curt nod back. That was all that was needed. 30 minutes earlier, the scene had been one of calculated perfection. The air was thick with the scent of expensive flowers and self-congratulation. I watched Chloe glide across the dance floor with her new husband, Dmitry Volkov, a man whose charm was as polished as his shoes. They floated past me, a perfect couple in their perfect world. Chloe leaned her head back, and her eyes, sharp and cruel, as always, found mine. "Still playing pretend hero in your little government cubicle, Eliza?" She sneered, just loud enough for Dmitry to hear. "Must be sad." He smirked, a flash of condescension that confirmed everything I already knew about him. It was a familiar sting, another paper cut added to a death by 1,000 cuts that had started in childhood. I kept my face a polite, placid mask. I'd had a lifetime of practice. But then, as they danced away, I saw Dmitry lean toward his father, Oleg Volkov, the family patriarch, a man who radiated a quiet, predatory danger. My earring, a piece of tech they'd dismiss as a cheap accessory, flared to life, amplifying their whispers. Dmitry murmured to his father in swift, confident Russian, never imagining the quiet sister in the corner was fluent. He wasn't talking about the wedding or the honeymoon. He was confirming a shipment. He spoke the name of the port, the Shell Corporation, the exact details that my team had been hunting for 18 agonizing months. He spoke the final piece of the puzzle. In that instant, my sister's insult evaporated. The personal hurt, the years of being overlooked, it all just vanished. It was replaced by a cold, crystalline focus, a predator's calm. The sting of her words didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was that her mockery had brought him close enough, made him careless enough, to arm the weapon I had spent years building against his family. He thought I was a nobody in a cubicle. He had no idea that my cubicle had a global reach, and he had just given me the go-ahead to use it. A quiet fury settled over me, not for the insult, but for the sheer arrogance of it all. Chloe thought her words were a simple sting, another casual cruelty to remind me of my place. She had no idea she had just delivered the final key to me, right in front of the man whose entire criminal empire I was about to dismantle. To understand the precision of the storm that was about to break, you have to understand the two lives I was living. To my family, I was a ghost at the table, a placeholder in a life that wasn't really mine. The narrative of our family had always been the Chloe show, and never was that more apparent than last year's holiday dinner. The entire evening was an altar built to my sister's latest triumph, her engagement. My father, a man who measured worth in handshakes and public perception, was holding court, booming about Dmitry's excellent prospects. My mother, a woman who believed family peace was a delicate bird to be kept in a cage at all costs, just beamed, her smile as bright and brittle as the crystal glasses on the table. They hung on Chloe's every word as she described the weight of the diamond, the thread count of the linens for their new home, the sheer, breathtaking expense of it all. The praise was a tidal wave, and I was just a rock being worn smooth by its passing. After dessert, I tried, foolishly, to paddle out into the current. I cleared my throat and mentioned quietly that I'd received a departmental commendation, a small thing maybe, but it was mine. It was for my work, for my mind. My father paused his story, looked at me, and gave my hand a light, dismissive pat. "That's nice, dear," he said, his eyes already drifting back to Chloe. "But Chloe is building a real legacy. A real legacy." The words hung in the air, and I saw it all laid out in my mind. The internal ledger of a lifetime. I saw the tuition for Chloe's art history degree while I worked 2 jobs to pay for my statistics textbooks. I saw the down payment they gave her for her first condo, while I was told that money is tight when my student laptop finally gave out. It wasn't about the money. It was about what it represented, an investment in one child and a polite, loving neglect of the other. But my father's definition of legacy and mine were different. While he saw a boring desk job, my reality was a silent, windowless room known as a skiff, a sensitive, compartmented information facility. This was my real office. Here, there were no condescending pats on the hand, only the low, steady hum of servers processing data from 3 continents. My name wasn't Eliza. It was Echo. And my legacy wasn't being built over dinner. It was being built on a massive smartboard, glowing with the intricate, interconnected web of a global criminal enterprise. My superior, Director Jansen, a stern but profoundly fair man who ran the multinational financial crimes task force, stood with his arms crossed, watching me work. He never interrupted. He trusted my process completely. The layering stage is the key, I explained, my voice calm and confident in the sterile air, a voice my family never heard. I pointed to a note on the screen. We've traced it back to 3 ghost accounts in Cyprus. They're using shell corporations fronted by distant relatives, but the SWIFT data confirms it's Oleg Volkov. I drew a line connecting the accounts to a new cluster of data points. And this is the genius of it. He's using Dimitri's wedding gifts as a way to wash the initial down payment for the next weapons shipment. The gifts are the perfect cover. Jansen just nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the board. In this room, my analysis wasn't nice. It was the linchpin of an operation that would prevent weapons from falling into the hands of rogue states. Here, I wasn't a footnote. I was the author. That night, after the engagement party, my mother called. Her voice was laced with that familiar pleading tone she used whenever she needed me to make myself smaller for Chloe's sake. I know she can be sharp with you, Eliza, she began, the classic opening to 1,000 similar conversations. But she's just so happy. You have to understand. I stared out my apartment window at the city lights, feeling a galaxy away from her. This man, Dimitri, she continued, her voice filled with awe. He's giving her everything we could never give her. A whole life. Just be happy for her. I thought about the wire transfers I'd spent all week tracking, the blood money that paid for the diamond on my sister's hand. I thought about the quiet pride I felt when Director Jansen told me my work was saving lives. My mother wasn't asking me to be happy for Chloe. She was asking me to be blind. She was asking me to agree that the life Chloe was being given was worth more than the one I was painstakingly, honorably, and silently building for myself. Her plea for peace was just a request for me to remain invisible. For years, I had let them have their narrative. I let them believe I was a footnote in my sister's grand story. But when her story became entangled with my mission, I knew I had to end it. They only understood the language of money and power, and I was about to use the full weight of the international justice system to speak it for me. The moment Chloe announced the venue and date, something inside me shifted. The dull, familiar ache of being overlooked was replaced by a sharp, sudden clarity, the kind I only felt when a complex puzzle was about to snap into place. This wasn't about getting even. Revenge is messy, emotional. This was about operational integrity. The wedding wasn't a family event for me anymore. It was a strategic opportunity. The Volkovs would have their guard down, surrounded by opulence and arrogance, all their key players in one room. My goal became a clean, simple, and utterly final procedural decapitation of their entire syndicate. The next day, I stood before Director Jansen in the skiff and laid out my plan. I called it Project Trojan Bride. My position as the sister, the quiet and unassuming wallpaper in Chloe's life, was no longer a liability. It was my greatest asset, a level of access no ordinary operative could ever achieve. I formally requested a specialized piece of surveillance technology, an earring that was actually a high-fidelity microphone, linked directly to our listening post. The objective was precise: to capture a direct, in-person verbal confirmation of the arms deal between Oleg and Dimitri. That final, irrefutable piece of evidence would be the trigger needed to activate the pre-signed Interpol red notices across 12 different countries simultaneously. My work became methodical, relentless. I used the excuse of helping my sister with wedding planning to acquire the venue's complete blueprints, which I then encrypted and forwarded to the Interpol tactical unit in the host country. I ran a final deep-dive social network analysis on the official guest list, flagging 2 other minor players in the Volkov organization who had, until now, remained ghosts. Every detail was a weapon, and I was sharpening them all. The final step was getting clearance. Director Jansen's face appeared on my secure monitor, his expression grim. "Eliza, this is highly irregular," he said, his voice tight. "Your personal proximity creates an unacceptable level of risk." I met his gaze without flinching. "It's the only way to get the final trigger word," I stated, my voice even. "They feel invincible inside that ballroom. They feel safe." I let that hang in the air for a moment. That's the vulnerability. He was silent for a long time, the weight of his decision palpable even through the screen. Finally, he gave a single curt nod. "Echo 7 activation is a go," he said, and the screen went dark. The trap was now set. All that was left was for the guests of honor to enter. The invitation arrived on thick, creamy cardstock, addressed to Eliza. Chloe's handwriting was a self-satisfied flourish. She had no idea she was personally inviting her own judgment day, or that the boring sister was coming not as a guest, but as the executioner of Operation Gilded Cage. The ballroom was suffocating. It wasn't just the heat from the hundreds of bodies packed inside. It was the sheer weight of the entitlement in the air. A thick, cloying smog of champagne and self-satisfaction. From my position near the gilded French doors, I was a ghost, an unnoticed shadow in a room ablaze with light. Chloe was the sun at the center of this universe, radiant and laughing as she held court, a queen in her element. Across the room, Oleg Volkov watched the proceedings with the placid gaze of a lion surveying his territory, absolutely certain of his power. He looked like a king, and this room was his court, filled with his loyal, fawning subjects. Every laugh felt hollow, every toast a lie. I was just watching, and I was listening. Then came the moment, the one my entire operation was balanced upon. Chloe and Dmitri danced past, his arm possessively around her waist. Her eyes found mine, and the familiar cruel smirk played on her lips. "Still pretending to be a hero in your little government cubicle, Eliza?" She mocked, her voice a poisoned dart aimed right at me. "Must be sad." Dimitri's answering smirk was all the confirmation I needed. The final entry in a lifetime's ledger of insults had just been logged. But as they slipped, another kind of confirmation came. My focus was absolute. Dmitri leaned into his father, his back to me, and my earring captured the whisper of his Russian words, clear as a bell. "The container is cleared. Payment will be confirmed by midnight." That was it. The trigger. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. A profound and chilling calm washed over me. All the years of being underestimated, of being the quiet sister, the boring one. It all culminated in this single, silent action. I raised my hand slowly to my ear, a gesture anyone would mistake for fixing my hair. My lips barely moved as I spoke a single, quiet code word into the microphone, a word that would bring an empire to its knees. "Nightingale." In a secure room halfway across the world, a red light flashed on a monitor. Director Jansen would have looked at it, taken a breath, and given a single command, "Execute." For me, a silent 5-minute clock began to tick. The world inside the ballroom carried on, completely oblivious. The band struck up a cheerful tune. Guests laughed, raising their glasses. I watched Chloe and Dmitri share another long cinematic kiss, two actors playing the lead roles in a tragedy they hadn't read the end of. They were blissfully, stupidly unaware of the storm that was gathering just outside the doors. My eyes never left the entrance. I just waited. The 5 minutes ended. The main doors didn't just open. They burst inward, crashing against the walls. The music screeched to a halt as 24 black-clad Interpol agents flooded the room, moving with the disciplined, terrifying precision of a wolf pack. A wave of silence, then a ripple of panic erupted into screams. But my attention was on the lead agent. He was a tall man with cold eyes, and he moved with an unnerving sense of purpose, bypassing the terrified guests, bypassing Oleg Volkov's stunned security. He walked past Dmitri, past Chloe, and made a direct, unwavering beeline for me. He stopped a respectful foot away. "Analyst Echo 7? He asked, his voice low but carrying in the sudden quiet. "Confirmation received. Operation Gilded Cage is a go." Time seemed to slow down. I saw Chloe's champagne flute slip from her fingers and shatter on the marble floor. Her face was a canvas of cascading emotions, first confusion, then indignation that her party was being ruined. Then, as she saw the agent speaking to me, with a deference no one had ever shown me in my entire life, her expression curdled into dawning, abject horror. Her mind, I could see, was frantically trying to connect two impossible dots, the international police force and her boring, invisible sister. "What is this?" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "What does she have to do with this?" But Oleg and Dmitri knew. Their faces had turned to stone, the masks of charm and civility falling away to reveal the cold, hard faces of professional criminals who knew the game was over. As an agent snapped handcuffs onto Dmitri's wrists, his eyes locked with mine. There was no confusion in his gaze. Only pure, unadulterated shock and a hatred so profound it was almost a physical force. That was when Chloe finally broke. A choked, guttural sob escaped her lips and she collapsed, her perfect white dress pooling around her in a heap of shattered dreams, her perfect life utterly and irrevocably destroyed by the one person she had never, ever taken seriously. My sister had spent our entire lives mocking my quiet world. In the end, it only took one word from that world to bring her own crashing down around her. In the immediate aftermath, the opulent ballroom became a gallery of chaos. The air, once thick with perfume and arrogance, now reeked of fear and echoed with the sounds of crying, shouting, and the sharp crackle of radios. Flashing red and blue lights painted strobing, grotesque patterns on the walls. Through it all, I stood as an island of calm, giving my debrief to the Interpol team leader in quiet, clipped sentences. My job was done. As they led me out, we walked past my parents. They were huddled together on a velvet settee, looking small and lost and utterly broken, their faces aged a decade in an hour. I met their wide, questioning eyes for a moment. And then I looked away. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a vast, quiet emptiness where a lifetime of trying used to be. We passed Chloe next. A bridesmaid was holding her, her body racked with deep, shuddering sobs that echoed in the cavernous room. Her perfect hair was a mess, her makeup streaked into a tragic mask. She saw me, and her sobbing hitched into a raw cry of my name, a question and an accusation all in one. There was no victory on my face, no hint of a triumphant smirk. There was only the quiet finality of a long and difficult case coming to a close. The noise, the drama, the wreckage of their lives, it was already fading, becoming background noise to a world they could never touch. 6 months later, I stood in a silent, state-of-the-art command center in The Hague. The air here was cool and clean, smelling of ozone and coffee. Before me, a massive screen displayed a map of the world, glowing with dozens of points of light across 12 countries. Each light represented a seized asset of the now-defunct Volkov syndicate: yachts in Monaco, ghost accounts in Cyprus, penthouses in London, all of it neutralized. It was a silent testament to a war won not with bullets, but with data. Director Jansen came and stood beside me, his hands clasped behind his back. He followed my gaze to the map. "The final asset forfeiture went through this morning," he said, his voice a low rumble of satisfaction. "You didn't just catch a few criminals, Echo." He turned to look at me, his eyes filled with a respect my father never once showed me. "You dismantled a global threat. Your analysis was the linchpin. That was my commendation. That was my legacy." My life now had a different rhythm. I was no longer just an analyst, I was leading my own team. My new family was a group of sharp, focused individuals who argued with me about data integrity and drank terrible coffee at 3 a.m. while hunting for ghosts in the machine. When I entered the briefing room, they didn't see quiet Eliza. They saw their lead. They listened with an intense focus, their respect earned not by blood or obligation, but by competence and a shared, unwavering sense of purpose. Here, in this world of quiet intensity and immense consequence, I was not invisible. I was seen. I was essential. I was home. Last week, an email notification popped up on my screen. The sender was simply Chloe. The subject line was one word: please. For a moment, I just stared at it. With a strange sense of detachment, I clicked it open. It was exactly what I expected: a long, rambling, pleading message filled with blame disguised as confusion, with excuses dressed up as remorse, and a desperate, hollow apology at the end that was more about her pain than mine. I read the first few lines, my expression unreadable. I thought about the girl on the ballroom floor. I thought of the woman on screen before me, leading her team. They were two different people from two different worlds. Then, with a quiet, deliberate click, I moved the email to the trash and then emptied it. My peace was no longer a negotiation. It was a fact. I turned back to the map on my screen, back to my work. My sister always wanted me to be her fairy tale bridesmaid. She never realized I was the author of my own reality, and in my story, I was never pretending to be the hero. If you've ever had to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it, share your story below. In this community, your expertise is always recognized.